Well, somebody out there,
Everybody wants to take their seats.
Here we go.
Thank you everybody for coming and welcome to the River News Herald and Allison Journal.
Yeah, here we go.
Third Congressional District debate. It's between incumbent Democrat John Garamendi and Republican challenger Kim Vann. We'd like to give thanks to Jim Bauman for the use of his facility tonight. And a special thanks to the Garamendi and Vann campaign. This is a very important election. California is facing some of the hardest times in recent memory, and the 3rd District is no exception. Spanning from Vista here in the south to just north of Orland in the north. The redistricted 3rd encompasses a good portion of the Sacramento River, including the entire Sacramento Delta. Tonight we will be asking questions that pertain to this region and what proposals each candidate will make to best benefit and represent the Delta region. Have to do a coin toss. Sorry, we should have done that before.
Need a coin?
Who'd like to call it?
Karen. I'll call it.
Yep. Got it.
Heads.
You got tails.
Would you like to go first?
No, I'll go second.
Yeah.
All right.
We can start with an introduction from each candidate. Kim, would you like to go ahead?
Well, thank you, Galen, so much, and thank you to the River News Herald. I'm going to apologize. I'm still fighting a little bit of a bug, so if my voice is gravelly or you can't hear me, give me a little thumbs up and I'll try to talk a little bit louder. But it is an absolute privilege to be here before all of you this evening. I grew up in a small town, very much like Rio Vista, up in Arbuckle in Colusa County. My family's been in that area for about 5 generations farming up there. I've been a Colusa County Supervisor now for about 6 years. And when this new 3rd Congressional District came open, with all the new wonderful counties that it encompassed, I decided that I just could not sit back and watch this country go down the wrong path. So I decided to jump into this race. You know, I have this wonderful 9-year-old son, and you know, so many things that come out of our kids' mouths at that young age are such truths, and I value what his future is going to be like. And I do not believe that we're setting the right tone in this country to create the greatest opportunity for him that we should. I'm a granddaughter of a World War II vet and a daughter of a Vietnam vet. These men had such a profound impact on my life and have shaped who I am today. I have the privilege of working for my other grandfather in a small business, in Napa Auto Parts, with a tire shop in the back. And I jokingly tell people I learned how to blow an implement tire off a rim from here, but I won't tell you how we did it. So those of you who are laughing know what I'm talking about. But you know, so many of the impacts that our government is placing on our small and our medium sized businesses are just driving them out of our small communities. And we have to get back to a place where we can support these businesses and set the tone so that we can grow our small communities and really create opportunities for our children and grandchildren. So again, thank you so much for having us here this evening, and I look forward to this.
2 minutes.
Thank you very much, River News Herald, and for all of you that are here. It's good to be here. I left home in Walnut Grove, drove down the river. And as I was driving down the river, my mind was going through memories of our 6 children being raised in that home in Walnut Grove, selling pears, doing pear season out on the highway, Humphrey the whale here on this river, and the effort that everyone in this community made to make sure that she got out of here safely. I don't know that we ever quite figured that out, but anyway, it was memories of 1982, when Jerry Brown decided that he was going to complete his father's water project and build the peripheral canal. And the incredible fight that took place and the victory that we had to protect the Delta. The flood in '86, in which Walnut Grove almost got flooded, Tyler Island did. And some of this community also had some very high water in its street. Walnut Grove didn't get flooded because he happened to be the senator at the time, and the colonel from the Corps of Engineers came down and we said, we can save this town. We can build a new levee. And we did, just ahead of the floodwaters. Walnut Grove didn't flood. The kids were out sandbagging, my kids, the Boy Scouts, and others. Memories of this area. This has been a good place to raise the family. And there's no other place quite like this Delta. Largest estuary on the west coast of the Western Hemisphere. There's no other place like it. It's very precious. It's precious to you, it's precious to me, it's my home, and for many of you, it's been your lifetime home also. And we need to protect it. We need to value it. Jay is out fishing tomorrow, and no, I won't be fishing tomorrow, except for boats. But I've been out on that river. It's incredible. It's ours, and we're going to protect it again. They want to destroy it with a canal or a tunnel or twin tunnels or whatever it is. And you know and I know that if that were to happen, at least half the year, 50% of the water in this river would be gone, and there'd be salt water out here. And what we know and what we love would be lost. We're not going to let it happen. Many, many things are going to happen in the future. One of them is we're going to build a world-class research center here in Rio Vista, in the current district that I represent, which is the Army base. A project that the city has been working on for years. I'll talk more about it when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you. So Kim, we'll start with you. Small businesses in the Delta are struggling as well as all across the nation. If you're elected, how can you help grow the economy along the Sacramento River while still protecting the environmental and historical aspects of the region?
Thank you. Did everybody hear the question okay? No. The question was basically how do we grow small businesses in our Delta area and throughout this congressional district. You know, small businesses are struggling. In this congressional district, about 80% of the jobs and the economy are because of small and medium-sized businesses. They're the ones who are going to be hardest hit by the taxes. They are the ones that are the hardest hit by unnecessary and overreaching regulatory policies. We've got to start reining in the policies, and we've got to start producing a tax structure that benefits our small and medium-sized businesses. You know, I jokingly tell people my first job was flipping hamburgers in a half gas station, half short order cook restaurant. You know, and I watched as this family who had built up this business lost their business to unnecessary regulations and overreaching regulations. They were not able to do what the state was trying to force them to do, and they lost everything they had worked for. You know, one of the reasons why I'm running for this seat is several years back, I sat across from a landowner, a first-generation immigrant from Russia. And he sat across the table from me with tears streaming down his face. And he said, I've worked 3 jobs at one time to buy this piece of property. And one agency is trying to take it all away from me, Kim. How can it be like this in this country? I did everything I could do to get here, and they're treating me just like I was in Russia. Now, I did everything I could at the time to make sure that he could use his property at what he was legally allowed to use his property for, and we succeeded. How many of you here have ever seen any new boat ramps or have tried to get a business permitted along the river? It's almost impossible. We've got to start changing those policies so that small businesses can grow in communities like Rio Vista and like Arbuckle.
We have a very, very unique asset. There's no other asset like that. It's right there. It's the river. It's the sloughs. It's the waterways. It's the agricultural land. It's very unique. We have to protect it. We lose lose the fresh water in the river, we're going to lose it. The businesses here in this area, the tourism business, the fishing industry, the agricultural industry, it won't survive. So if we're going to build economic opportunity here, the first thing we have to do is to be certain that we keep the water in the river. Secondly, we have to be sure that the water stays in the river and not on the land. And therefore, how we maintain our levees and the role of the federal government in maintaining the levees is exceedingly important. I've introduced a piece of legislation that requires the water exporters to maintain their plumbing system. The plumbing system happens to be the waterways and the levees that keep the water in the river. We also are requiring that the federal government conduct a detailed cost-benefit analysis before there is anything built to take water around the delta. That's how we start this process. Secondly, we make sure that the rivers project pushes. Thank you. Come back.
No, we said 30 seconds.
Did you say 30 seconds?
Yeah, 30 seconds.
I'll take the 30 seconds. We have to make sure that the Rivers Project actually takes place. What's the Rivers Project? It is the bringing together here in Rio Vista of all of the scientific research that's being done in the Delta and in the eastern part of the bay in one location.
Sorry.
Congressman, with the implementation of a green jobs program at Rio Vista High School and the importance of green energy to Solano County's economy, how will you work to incorporate green job education opportunities into the entire district to strengthen our future workforce and compete globally?
Thank you. First, I'm going to finish in 10 seconds the Rivers Project. It was dead, going nowhere, until I became the congressman representing that particular part of this community. It's now almost funded. In fact, part of it is funded, and we're down to writing the environmental statements and moving that project forward. It's going to be built. Because this community has worked on it for so very long, the city council, the leadership in this community. Now, with regard to the green jobs, critically important, but they won't matter much unless we have a production tax credit, and the Republican leadership in the Congress, the Republican Congress, and a man that wants to be president, Mr. Romney, are voting no and not allowing the production tax credit to go forward. So those wind turbines, the new ones, were just not going to be built beyond what is already scheduled. However, the companies out there have put together a green jobs program here in the school districts. We call this, we used to call it vocational education, we now call it career development. Very, very important. How do we keep it going? Well, we keep the wind turbines going, we keep that moving along, and we make sure that our tax money is spent on American-made equipment, not on foreign-made turbines or foreign-made solar cells. That's my legislation. That's how you build the businesses here in this community and beyond. You say, listen, if you're going to get a production tax credit, or if you're going to have a tax rebate for your solar system, then you must buy an American-made product, at least 85% made in America. It works for China, it can work for us, and we must do that. Beyond that, we need to also bring into our schools the rest of the vocational programs, such as agriculture and other manufacturing that does take place here in this community, so that children, as they go through school and as they become adults, have the skills necessary. It also is a way to get them interested in the education that is necessary to carry out those skills.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I think it's tremendous that the school is incorporating vocational training. I think we've been missing that for years, not only in our high school level, but also in our junior colleges and in higher education. You know, I support the wind tax credit, and I support tax credit for innovation and for green jobs. But I also support those for the rest of our small and medium-sized businesses, for our businesses that want to produce energy in other fashions as well. As a county supervisor, we built the largest power plant in the state of California that's been built in over 20 years in my county. We built a 690 megawatt gas-fired cogen power plant. It's the cleanest power plant in the state that fires off natural gas. Now, it took an arm and a leg to fight the state and the feds off from trying to stop us building this power plant. Now, we can't just help green jobs. We have to help all jobs, and we have to have vocational education all the way across the board. In our high school, at Pierce High School, where I went to high school, and my parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, and hopefully my son, we have one of the most renowned ag departments. We teach metal, we have wood shop, we have craftsmanship that goes on in there. We teach kids the sciences behind agriculture to encourage future generations to come back into communities like ours and grow their businesses and grow their careers. Because I know we all would love our kids to be able to be close to home and live next to us, but they need to be able to flourish. So that's why we have to supply the same type of credits to all our businesses.
Thank you. All right, this is for you, Ken. According to a map put out by the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, a forebay is scheduled to be created near Cortland, which would raise the water table in the area as much as 10 feet and flood out priceless farmland and essentially destroy a farmer's livelihood. The proposal is part of the peripheral tunnel conveyance plans. What will you do if elected to protect some of the best farmland in the world from eminent domain? What is your knowledge of the plan and what is your position?
Well, first and foremost, I do not support the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. I do not support the peripheral canal. My parents are farmers in Colusa County. I would be doing them direct harm. So to say that I support that is a flat out lie. Now, we've got multiple plans going on at the state level, and we have a plan or two going on at the federal level to try to address the issues in the Delta. But the one thing we aren't doing is addressing storage upstream. Now, I've sat on the site's JPA for a number of years to construct additional storage and flood protection up in northern part of Colusa County. That's the first step. We have to make sure we have additional storage and flood protection. But flood protection needs to be handled all throughout this district. We don't just have issues here in the Delta with severely undermined flood protection, but we have Yuba and Sutter counties in this district. I mean, how many of you remember Peachtree, 20 so years ago, when that community was just absolutely devastated? So we have to take a holistic approach to addressing the issues down here.
The current proposal is not a canal, it's a tunnel. In fact, it's two tunnels, 15,000 cubic feet between the two, and 9,000 cubic feet intakes. And in fact, it would devastate the Cortland area for the reasons that you do, plus the taking of a very large amount of land, completely change the nature of that part of this delta. I'm unalterably opposed to it. I've fought this water grab for years. The Westlands Water District is the principal supporter of this scheme. And together with the Metropolitan Water District and the Kern County Water District. I've been involved in water fights here in California since 1974, and I've represented the Delta since 1974. When I was in the Assembly, this was my district. Not here, but Walnut Grove and that area was in the district, including Sherman Island. I know this area, and I know this fight. It's one we cannot lose. It's one that is critical to California. There is a water solution to California, but it is not to steal the water from the north, and it is not to sell out to the Westlands Water District. My opponent has taken over $40,000, and it's actually over $50,000 from the farmers in the Westlands Water District. Go figure. This is an issue. Now, what are we going to do about this? There is a solution, and I'll have time during this course of this debate to talk about it. With regard to Sites Reservoir, I'm the one in Congress that wrote into the legislation that has passed out of committee that there would be a Sites Reservoir and the JPA would have the authority to carry it forward. However, the Republicans on that committee decided to change my amendment and write into it that the federal government could not participate. A particularly dumb thing done by Congressman Denham.
Thank you.
Why would you ever want to do that? But That's what they did.
This is for you, Congressman. What is your position on drilling for natural gas in the Delta? An incident occurred at Duck Island RV Park earlier this year in which a pipeline ruptured across the highway and caused a large fire. The fallout from the fire has affected residents' health negatively and caused damage to their property. What can be done to better regulate drilling and protect citizens?
A few moments ago, you just heard a very strong plea to eliminate regulation. Be careful. Not all regulation is bad. In fact, this delta has been protected by the Endangered Species Act and regulation. Were it not for that, who knows what would be the result. Now, pipeline regulation is a similar problem. I was on the Transportation Committee and likely to go back on the Transportation Committee, which also oversees the Corps of Engineers. For years, my team has argued for pipeline safety regulation, and we've been stopped by the other team. And therefore, the pipelines, the gas pipelines and other pipelines across this nation are not adequately regulated for safety. This is an issue of safety. We saw what happened in the San Bruno situation. 8 lives lost, I think 23 homes destroyed. Pipeline safety is critical, and this is a regulatory issue, also a legislative issue. I was also a regulator over the insurance companies, and I understand how regulation can protect consumers. So what do we need to do with regard to PG&E? We need to hold them accountable, and we need to make the PG&E equity holders pay for it rather than the consumers pay for it. Major issue confronting California at this time. Who's going to pay for the upgrading of the pipelines, PG&E? Is it going to be the consumers, or is it going to be the owners of the company? Tell you what, they should have been maintaining those things over the years. They had the opportunity. In fact, there was a rate increase, general rate increase for Pacific Gas and Electric to upgrade its lines. They used that money for dividends, not for upgrades. So we need to be careful here. Thank you.
You know, just to start from the back end for a second of what the Congressman was saying, you know, PG&E does need to be responsible, and the shareholders need to be responsible, and they do need to maintain those lines, and they need to be out there checking. But overregulation isn't going to stop an accident from happening when you're talking about 1 or 2 separate and different issues. We need good, strong regulations in place, but we need the staff in place that can go out and do the checking and make sure, as they're going along in the projects, that the projects are being built correctly. So we need to empower local governments who are permitting these to make sure that they're able to do the job that they need to do in checking these projects. You know, when you look at the safety record, 90% of the time, things go extremely well and are very safe. But if we just look at it from a perspective of constant overregulation, we're going to get to a place where the business is going to find other ways to cut corners and spend less money doing the things that they should be doing on safety because the overregulations are so far-reaching and things are going to get worse and worse and worse. But we need to empower the jurisdictions that are issuing these local permits. You know, being a county supervisor, that's kind of with my county supervisor hat on. Thanks.
Are there going to be any audience questions?
That went by fast.
This question is for you, Gavin. You state that it's time to get government out of the way to grow the economy. What are your specific proposals to grow the economy? And what is your plan to jumpstart an economy that has just recently begun to stabilize?
Well, the economy hasn't stabilized. It's still doing the up and down, and it's bouncing. We have 23 million Americans who are unemployed. I would not call that stable by any stretch of the means. We have an unemployment rate that's going down because people are no longer looking for jobs, because we have more government jobs than we do private sector jobs in this most recent downtick in the unemployment, and part-time jobs. That's not a stable economy. We've got to reduce regulations on small and medium-sized businesses so that they can invest more in hiring more people and growing their businesses. We need a tax code that doesn't take one person 12 hours a day to figure out. And in combined with those, and setting the good tone at the federal level and at the state level and at the local level, so that businesses know you're wanted here in the United States. You're wanted here in the state of California, and you're wanted here in our county. The businesses have to know that the tone has been set. Solano County has had a mass exodus of employers. Cobart Industries, part of Genentech. We have to give them an environment that they can flourish in our communities.
The role of the federal government in this issue is extremely important. You do not build an economy with the private sector alone. You have to have government and private sector working together to make it happen. Here in the Delta, government's going to play a major role if we're going to have this Delta protected and to move along. We talked earlier about the production tax credit and the wind turbine industry in this area. We also talked earlier about how we can use our tax money to create jobs here. In other words, make it in America, rebuild our manufacturing sector. Note this, that during my tenure in Congress, 3 years, we have voted 18 times to reduce taxes on small businesses. The current tax proposal that I support would reduce taxes on 98% of the small businesses in America. 98%. Now, going forward, what do we need to do? Yes, we do need wise regulations, and regulations always need to be reviewed, updated, or done away with. That's true. But there needs to be a rule, and there needs to be referees on the field. We saw what happened with Wall Street when there were no rules and there was no referee on the field. It led to the largest crash of this economy since the Great Depression.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These questions for you, Congressman. As you just stated, with your Making it in America program, you intend to draft regulation in which 85% of wind, solar, geothermal, and biodiesel manufacturing will be completed within America's borders. If re-elected, how will you achieve pushing this legislation through Congress, and what will the impacts be?
Well, first, the impact. If we do it, we'll begin making trains and buses and bridges with American-made products. For example, the BART system has $3 billion of new trains that they're going to build over the next 5 years. They had an opportunity to go with Alstom, 95% American-made content, some of which would be done at the facility at Mare Island, where Alstom already has a plant. Bombardier had 65%. Bombardier won that bid, 3% lower, even though Alstom went to the board of directors of BART and said, rebid this in 60 days, or give it 30 days, rebid it, and we will match or better Bombardier's bid, and we'll maintain our 95% American. The board didn't choose to do that. $1 billion of American jobs are going to be done somewhere else. Make it in America works. It works and it's already making progress in that we are seeing the open-ended waivers that the Department of Transportation once did no longer being in place. There's a 65% or 60% American content in place now, but the waivers just opened it wide open. Now, what are we going to do in the future? I expect to go back onto the Transportation Committee, where I was bumped off when the Republicans took control of the House. If I go back on the Transportation Committee, we have next year and the year beyond to rewrite the highway bill. In that highway bill, if I'm on that committee, there's going to be a very strong Make It in America component, so that when bridges such as the San Francisco Bay Bridge are built, we're going to use American-made steel, not Chinese steel. 6,000 jobs went to China, and the creation of a very important steel plant in China that makes the only kind of steel for that kind of bridge in the world, giving them a monopoly on that particular product. Could have been American-made, but it wasn't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, it's sad when we have to have a piece of legislation to force companies to make it in America. We should have the environment in this country that businesses want to be doing business here, that we're no longer number 2 in manufacturing in the world, which we've slipped to over the last 2 years, that we're number 1. We should have the strongest and the best manufacturing capacity here, but we don't, because the businesses are leaving because they're being choked out. We have to set the tone. We can't continue to put Band-Aids of more regulation and forcing these businesses to do more and more and not change and not fix the original problem or the original wound. Until we do that and just keep putting more and more Band-Aids and more layers on it, it's never gonna work. We're gonna keep having the same problem over and over again, and we're never actually gonna do anything about the problem. So until we change the environment in this country so that the businesses wanna be here manufacturing, no one piece of legislation and no one regulation is gonna force businesses to do that. We can't force them to come back. We have to get them to come back.
Thank you. This question is for you. Here in the Delta, it's been, as Congressman mentioned, an allegation that you accepted upwards of $40,000 contribution from the Westlands Water District, the largest water district in the nation. If this is not so, please explain how this rumor came to be, and what is your knowledge of the different water districts in the region?
First of all, I wish I could name all the different water districts throughout the entire district. I was actually looking at the list. I was actually looking at the list the other day, and I honestly think I was a little bit surprised how many different water districts are inside the 3rd Congressional District. So we have a lot of work to do to get these water districts coordinated. But first of all, I did not take $40,000 from Westlands Water District. The ag community all throughout this state has supported me. John Harris, a wonderful man, happened to have a fundraiser for me. My family's been in the cattle industry for 6 generations. We happen to know each other. The ag industry supports me because the Congressman's record on ag is horrible. Of the 19 bills that the California Farm Bureau wanted, he supported 4 of them. That's why the ag industry is supporting me. I have never once said I would support a canal or a tunnel. That would be ridiculous. That would harm every farmer in my family in Colusa County, and it would do damage to this area that would be beyond repair. So that's just not the case. It was a manipulation. Now go to opensecrets.com and look at where our money's come from. 80% of the money I've raised has come from inside the 3rd Congressional District. 5% of the money he's raised has come from inside the 3rd Congressional District. Look at the Los Angeles money. Look at the San Francisco money. So please go to opensecrets.com and look at that.
It's the farmers in the Westlands Water District. John Harris, who I've known for more than 30 years, is on the board of directors of the Westlands Water District. And the other board of directors also contributed to it. So, you know, it's a fact. It's their open secrets. It's right there in open secrets. Decisions are going to be made in the months and the year ahead about the very future of this delta. It's a very important issue. I will just put it this way. Since 1974, I have either represented as an elected official or as Deputy Secretary of the United States Department of Interior, the Delta. And ever since my very first day in office, I have fought those who would steal water from the Delta, including the Westlands Water District that I have been fighting with since that time, and I will not stop, period. Now, with regard to businesses, how do you grow a business? You're going to have an environment and a tax environment that makes sense. As I said, the tax bills that I've supported reduce taxes on 98% of the small businesses in California. It does not, in the United States, does not reduce the taxes on those folks that are called small businesses that happen to be the Wall Street venture funds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it for our questions. Thank you all for your responses, and Congressman, you have 3 minutes to give your closing statement.
I'm just getting warmed up.
I thought there were some questions that would be coming from the audience, and that would be good too. But, this is one of the shortest debates we've ever had.
I'm sorry.
Well, maybe we can, I'm not going anywhere, and home is not so far away, so, do you want closing, or? I'm willing to stick around.
Take a couple questions, yeah. Let's take a couple questions. Jay?
Well, let's go for another 15 minutes.
One question from the audience.
How about
About some more.
How about 3 questions? Go ahead.
I'd like to ask a question. Normally, laws are made for all of us in this state and in the nation. And if we break the law, we're penalized. We have to pay for our mistakes. I'd like to relate something that our state and federal government has been breaking the laws for years, but nobody's done, pardon the expression, one damn thing about it. In 1952, the original water contracts for conveyance of water out of the Delta stated that only in wet years, excessive water may be conveyed out of the Delta. On a dry year, nothing. Presently, they're taking 6 to 8 million acre feet, 8 million acre feet out of the Delta without even looking at these contracts that were originally set up in 1952. They have originally already approved contracts for conveyance exceeding 168 million feet of water. Now you do the math. How can you take 168 million acre feet of water when you only have 28 million acre feet that flow out of this delta yearly? And it's about time the federal government, the State Department of Water Resources, the U.S. Reclamation Department start adhering to their rules and regulations. Let's get rid of that law and get that new contract written.
Would you like to?
Between 1994, 1995, and 1998, I was responsible for trying to negotiate a settlement for the water problem that you so correctly laid out, Jay. And we came to a conclusion that would protect this delta. Unfortunately, at the very last moment, when there was every water district in the state, the major water contractors, the Delta folks, and the North State water districts were all sitting at a table in Long Beach to sign an agreement that would protect this delta and provide the water that was needed for the delta. It was a solution. 3 years of negotiation, I was involved in that. As we picked up our pens to sign it, the Westlands Water District representative, who now happens to live in Walnut Grove, got up from the table, took a phone call, came back, put his pen down and said, Westlands Water District is not signing. I said, go back and tell your board of directors that this is the best deal they will have. And if they don't accept this proposal, they're going to be in court and they're going to have less water in the years ahead. That's exactly what happened. They went to court, they didn't sign, the deal didn't happen. And now they are back. The BDCP, as it is written, is nothing but an opportunity for the Westlands Water District to jump ahead, the Westlands Water District, the Metropolitan Water District, and the Kern County Water District, to jump ahead of prior water rights, including many of the water rights on the Sacramento River, and certainly the water rights in the Delta, and, just as important, the right for the fish and the aquatic to have fresh water. It's an 800,000 acre foot per year steal of water from the environment or from prior water right holders. We're not going to let it happen.
Thank you.
Well, I think that the Bay Delta Conservation Plan has been designed in a bubble. It hasn't taken into consideration all of the intricacies in this, and it's being pushed through. The governor's plan isn't going to work. I mean, the decision to try to fund a project with bonds, this isn't going to work, and it shouldn't work. And you guys should be fighting for every ounce of protection down here that you can get. And I appreciate your comments that the feds are breaking the laws. I haven't read the 52 decision that you were just talking about, but I'd really like to see it, because I really appreciate that Interior hasn't done their job, that they haven't held to the laws. And that's why I'd be very interested to see what.
One other thing, Kim, that this Bay Delta Conservation Plan, there's no representatives from the 5 counties surrounding this delta. They're all hand-selected puppets by the governor, and that's what they are.
And that's why the input doesn't have hardly any value at all.
That's right.
So I really appreciate that comment. You know, I'm great friends with Supervisor Reagan, who has been a staunch advocate for protecting the Delta. You know, and he's been supporting and working on my campaign this past year. And he, you know, whenever I have a question, I always turn to Mike to talk to him about this. And that is one of his biggest concerns, is the lack of the five counties in this area and their input on that. So, I mean, it's just unacceptable. You can't go into a plan if you're not having the input of the counties around you.
I have a question. I'm a 5th generation cattle farmer here in the county, and for my family, one of the biggest issues with the Delta project, whatever you call it, there's so many different, I think there's like 160 different things going on right now with the Delta. But one of the 2 biggest issues for us is the loss of the original riparian rights that allows most of the Delta to irrigate their lands, the attack on that individual water right, and then the environmental land grab that is being proposed through the BDCP and a lot of these other processes. They're proposing in Solano County alone up to 100,000 acres of productive farmland to go out of production and into environmental habitat. And I'd like to get both of your guys' take on that issue.
Well, the loss of riparian rights is almost in every state plan. To go back and revisit your water rights is almost the first step in every plan that we've seen come down in this area. And that can't happen. I mean, that's a non-starter, especially for the farmers in this area. And once that starts, once we start visiting the water rights and the riparian water rights, it doesn't stop. So it's not just in this area, but it'll keep going further and further. And, you know, when we're addressing this situation again, it has to be with all of the entities at the table. It can't be done by one group that has one interest in mind. You have to be a leader that's willing to force everyone at the table and stay there at the table until we come up with a plan that does not take riparian water rights away from our farmers in this area, or the rest of the area for that matter.
You're correct what the BDCP wants to do. And as long as I'm around, we will do everything necessary to make sure that it does not happen. Both the theft of the water as well as the habitat restoration, which does take away the agricultural land that you've said. It's not just in Solano County, it's in Sacramento County, Yolo County, it's everywhere in this delta. Now, there are things that can be done to restore the habitat, and those can move forward without the condemnation of good agricultural land. Listen, this issue is in Washington, D.C. You need a representative in Washington, D.C. that understands the intricacies of California water, of Western water. This is a major, major fight in Washington, D.C., not just here. The Republicans put forth a bill that steals the water from the Delta and from the North State. There was one person who stood on the floor of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, and said, "No way, no how." You can go check it out. It was me. I have been there for 34 years protecting this Delta. And I'm not about to give it up. These are intricate water law issues. This is about very complex systems. And if you're going to be in Washington, you had better know what you're talking about, or you'll get steamrolled. They do not steamroll me, and in fact, they come to me to talk about what is going on with California and Western water situations. I rallied the Western water governors, the governors of the Western states, to oppose the Nunes bill, which was supported by virtually the entire Republican Party on the House floor. I rallied them because I know Western water. And I know California water, and I know California water law, and I know the environmental issues that are associated with it. Whether it's salmon in the river, or up the streams, wherever it happens to be. I have been there for 34 years, and you need a representative in Washington that has the knowledge and the ability to fight this fight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take one more question.
Hi, my name is Gail, and I have a clarification for Ms. Vann. Earlier, when we were talking about San Bruno and the tragedy there, and the inspections of pipelines, you, as I understood it, stated that the city should have more local control and be doing those inspections?
I think I said that make sure that the counties, we're responsible for a lot of the inspections when things are put in, because a lot of the permits are issued either by a city or by a county as well, and so we have a lot of responsibility
The counties do, and
when
do
facilities are going in.
each of the counties have that trained personnel, or would that be an added expense to the payroll for a bigger government?
Well, in our building departments, we all have people set up. Now, it's just it depends on how big our building departments are, whether we have one person in there or 3 or 4 people. So
That are
that's,
trained to do those safety inspections?
they have to, or either we contract out with a firm that specializes in it. That's
So we're
usually-
doing the work at taxpayers' expense for a private business such as PG&E. PG&E can't afford?
No, we have to inspect to make sure they're doing the work correctly. That's, it's same with any building, when a house.
Oh, I understand that process.
It's just inspecting it as you go. It's not the whole thing, but it's just like with a building permit. We have the responsibility to make sure that the businesses are doing what they said they're going to do. Sorry, I should have used my microphone.
Pipeline safety has multiple regulators. Some pipelines are regulated by the county and city. Those are usually the distribution lines. Interstate pipelines are regulated by the federal government. The problem that I described earlier are the large pipelines where the pipeline regulation laws are now more than 30 years old. They are out of date, and the funding for the inspectors has not been forthcoming. And in fact, in the Ryan Romney Republican budget, there is a very significant reduction in the inspectors so that there is less regulation. Okay? You like a few explosions, have less regulation, have less oversight, get government out of the way. No way. You like regulation? No, you don't like regulation. When you go talk to those 14 people that have died because of a lack of regulation on a compounding pharmacy in Massachusetts. There are some things where regulation is exceedingly important. And to say that the future of this nation is going to be solved by getting rid of regulation is just plain foolishness. You need wise regulation, you need smart regulation, and you need regulation to protect the public. Whether it is consumer regulation, as I did as your insurance commissioner, creating the best consumer protection agency in this nation, holding the insurance companies accountable to the contracts that they've sold to the public. You want public safety, you need regulation. It's called laws, it's called criminal laws, and the rest. To say that you can solve the problems with getting rid of regulation is just plain, simple foolishness. Now, there are things that can be done. You can pass laws that allow companies to write off their capital equipment in 1 year, not over 10 years depreciation. I brought that idea to Congress, it became the law, and it was in place until the Republican Congress refused to extend it. Businesses were allowed to grow their business using the tax codes. I also believe that our tax money must be spent on American-made equipment.
Thank you. Congressman, would you like to close it?
Did you get your 3 questions from the audience?
You have, you have
There's one right there.
All right. Do you, one more?
Sure.
I'm easy.
All right.
I'd like to ask you something. We got a robocall yesterday about Congressman Garamendi's position on Medicare, and today we got 3 flyers in the mail, and I don't understand what the issue is, and I wonder if both of you could explain it to me.
I haven't heard the robocall or see the flyers, so I'd have to see them, or I haven't I apologize, I haven't seen the flyers or gotten a robocall like that. So it's questioning, you would have to explain to me what the flyer said before I can give you
He's
it.
going to do it.
Right here.
This is paid for by the Americans for Accountability and Leadership.
Who are they? Whoever they are.
Out of Sacramento. I'm sorry, I can't tell you exactly who they are, but.
Oh, Super PAC.
The Tea Party, is that what you said?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
There's a legal term, or at least a political term, it's called plausible deniability. In fact, I have the pleasure of having my own personal super PAC to attack me. It happens to be her supporters who have formed a super PAC because the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the other national super PACs pulled out of this race, and so a new super PAC has emerged, and it's the name that was just said. Hey, listen, we've got a very, very serious problem in America. It's called Citizens United and the super PACs. The super wealthy are going to control this country unless we deal with this very, very serious problem. Now, with regard to Medicare, no one, and this is from the National Committee to Protect Social Security and Medicare, whose only task is to make sure that Social Security and Medicare are there for our seniors now and into the future. That organization has said this: no one in Congress fights harder or more often to protect Social Security and Medicare than John Garamendi. I am on the media, I'm on Fox, I am on MSNBC and CNBC and all of the others saying, do not destroy Medicare. Do not let it happen. I'm going to take a couple more seconds here, because this is where I've been attacked. No one in the Congress fights more than I do to make sure that the Ryan Romney Republican budget is never passed and never becomes law, because it will destroy Medicare. And I understand how that is done because it is an insurance program, and I understand insurance. It's a voucher system. It's a voucher system that will lead to the destruction of Medicare. And by the way, you won't get it at 65 under their proposal. You'll have to wait until 67. It is a deadly proposal, and it ought to die quickly. The fact of the matter is, Medicare is not bankrupt. The Affordable Health Care Act extended the life of Medicare by 8 years and gives every senior a annual wellness visit so that we can reduce the cost by keeping seniors healthy, blood pressure down, diabetes not there. $716 billion was taken away from insurance companies.
Thank you.
Just get everyone done.
Would you like to respond, Kim?
First of all, my father and my mother-in-law are both on Medicare and Social Security. We've got to preserve that for the people who are on that and for future generations. We have to start taking a hard look at what we need to do to preserve that, not only for my father and my mother-in-law, but for me and for my children and grandchildren. And we can't stop until we do. Let's talk about super PACs for a second. I think I'm the only one on television that didn't have a commercial paid for by somebody else. If you notice at the bottom of my commercial, all it says is paid for by Kim Vann for Congress. A super PAC did help Congressman Garamendi pay for his commercial. So I'm doing it on my own, and I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Closing?
I'm going to stay with Medicare here. Pretty important in this community. Very, very important in this community. The Medicare system works. It really does work. And it has been significantly improved. The Affordable Health Care Act is going to add 40 million Americans to the insurance rolls so that everybody that is currently paying for the uninsured doesn't have to do so anymore. In addition to that, $716 billion was taken out of the Medicare program. Where, you ask, was it taken out? It was taken out of an unnecessary bonus given to insurance companies to provide the Medicare Advantage program. They were making out like bandits. We said, you don't need that bonus. We're bringing it back and we're going to put it into additional care for seniors. Not one benefit has been taken away from Medicare, despite what that document says. Now, the rest of the story is the money came from hospitals that had high infection rates. They don't get paid for the readmission, and some certain provisions are not there. My opponent in the past has talked about reducing Social Security and Medicare payments. I am not going there. We also understand that we must find a way in the Medicare program to control cost. And that is done in the Affordable Health Care Act in 3 different ways. One of them happens to be called an electronic medical record. Another happens to be enforcement of standards. And the third way is to make certain that everybody in this nation has insurance. We're the wealthiest nations on God's earth. And we're one of the only nations in the advanced nation that does not provide universal health care. It is high time for this nation to get in line and provide that universal health care insurance program. That's where the Affordable Health Care Act does, and it is not a government takeover. It happens to be built on the existing system. It is simply a way to bring into the system the rest of the people that are left out. And there will be an exchange. There will be an exchange, and California has had an exchange for more than 50 years. It's called CalPERS. And you happen to belong to it. CalPERS is an exchange. It is an exchange in which the people that are in CalPERS can pick and choose who they want to get their insurance from, who their doctors are, and there is no death panel. There is no death panel. That is a flat-out lie. There is, however, in the existing health insurance system, a death panel. It's called the private health insurance companies, who, when a doctor requests a certain kind of procedure, the answer comes from somebody at the end of the telephone line, quite possibly in Bangladesh, saying, not allowed. That's where the death panel is, and I know this, because I've been the insurance commissioner in California, and I fought those guys, saying you cannot do that. You cannot deny that benefit, because it is medically necessary, and your contract says you will provide medically necessary services to the people you've insured.
Could you clarify the age of 75 and older, that if they have a stroke or whatnot, they will not be given the injection to clear out the clot?
Yeah, there's a word for this. It's BS.
Is it really?
It is not true. Period. It is not true. It is part of, well, listen, we lost the Congress. The Democrats lost the Congress on this issue in 2010 because of a pack of lies. A, the death penalty. B, the government takeover of insurance. And C, Medicare is destroyed. Not true. In the Ryan Romney Republican budget, there is the exact same $716 billion reduction in Medicare.
Thank you.
I'm going to finish this. It is there because the question is, what did they do with the money? They used that money, $716 billion, to backfill the high-end tax cuts. That's where the money went. We put the money back into medical services.
Help me understand where the money went to when it comes to Social Security way back in LBJ's time.
I will talk to you when this is over. I'm sorry, I'm out of time.
You can't do it now.
I think we had another question in the back there too, but that's okay. Okay, you know, it's been an absolute privilege to serve the residents of the county of Colusa. But when we were sitting the other day going over our payroll and looking at what we were going to be able to do for the workforce there for the county, and we got the notice from PERS that their premiums were going to increase from 7 to 14%, we had to hunker down and decide what we were going to do. All of our employees at our county are going to have an increase in their health care premiums of 7 to 14% this year alone. And the employees are looking at us going, How are we going to afford this? How are we going to be able to pay for this when we don't even know what our increase is going to be? Is it going to be 7%? Is it going to be 10%? Is it going to be 14%? How do you plan for your future? You can't do that when you have no control of costs whatsoever. We have to be able to do this in a system that preserves Medicare, that provides health care for all of the uninsured, but that puts the patient and the doctor relationship above all. I've absolutely enjoyed being here this evening and enjoyed talking to all of you. I look forward to the next couple weeks in the campaign, and I look forward to preserving all of our wonderful assets in this district for all of us. Thank you.
That concludes our debate, and thank you again to both candidates and everyone that came out to attend. And look for a detailed article this week in the paper. Have a good night.
I'm going to stick around if anybody has questions. I'll be here.